Mary blinked repeatedly and tried to stand up and stretch, but found that somehow she couldn't. It was dark. So dark. The world seemed to be spinning back and forth in a random dance. And her head throbbed ferociously. Throb, throb, throb. Again and again and again. Mary closed her eyes, breathed deeply in and out of her nose, and tried to clear her mind. She had to remember what had happened last night. Instead, Mary found herself picturing her mother. That pure, knowing smile, that musical laughter, those kind, forgiving eyes. Mary shook her head. She couldn't handle thinking about her mom and what had happened. Not now. A salient chill interrupted Mary's thoughts, the sensation trickling from the top of her spine all the way down to her ankles. The feeling grounded her in the present moment. Mary realized she was sitting upright in a hard wooden chair, and that her hands were behind her back. Then, as she tried to move, she found that her body was fastened to the chair. Tight bonds gripped her ankles to the legs of the chair, and her arms were similarly attached behind her at the wrist. First, Mary felt confusion. Then, the confusion morphed into a rush of panic that threatened to swallow her like some monstrous tidal wave. "Stop. Calm down. Just get control," Mary said aloud to herself. Mary had this habit of talking to herself when she was anxious. Something she had started as a child to calm herself down when she got scared at night, and she had just never really grown out of it. "Think what happened last night. You have to remember," Mary told herself. The room was still spinning mercilessly. Her stomach rolled and grumbled in angry protest. She had been drinking hard last night. Her friend Nicole had insisted that they go to the Three Tables, a trendy bar on the outskirts of town, in an attempt to cheer Mary up. It had been loud and crowded, and she knew she had taken shots. But after that, it was just empty, like some story without a proper ending. That's when Mary realized that there was a light in the room, a single candle on the ground just a few feet in front of her. Above the candle, taped on the concrete wall in front of her, was a piece of paper that read, "Sometimes I eat my victims." Adrenaline flooded Mary's body, the heat of panic flushing her cheeks as her heart pounded frantically against her chest. Dear God, no. Every secondhand story she had heard about kidnapping, every story she had ever skimmed online about some serial killer, lit up her imagination in a frenzy of images. Mary wriggled and strained like an animal caught in a trap. There was a bulge in her back pocket, her phone. Mary writhed on the chair, straining her limbs and arching her back. An involuntary whimper escaped out of her mouth. She choked it down violently. There! She had it. Mary gripped the phone tightly between her index and pointer fingers, delicately pulled it out of her pocket, and then she had her phone in her hand. Mary had to turn her neck completely around to see the screen. Relief, relief, sweet relief. The phone still had power. But that relief faded when Mary pressed the home button and saw the top corner of the screen. No signal. No, 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 no. But her voice changed nothing. She dialed 911, even though she knew it was useless. Mary rocked in the chair, frustrated, her body quivering. The leg of the chair caught on something on the ground. Mary lost her balance, and fell over harshly to the side, still attached to the chair. The unforgiving concrete greeted her shoulder with brutal pain. Her phone clattered across the ground in front of her. Mary lay there, sobbing. Mary had been in the car when her mother had died. They had been on their way back from a dinner together for some mother-daughter time. It hadn't gone well. They didn't fight or anything, but it was stilted and awkward. She didn't have a bad relationship with her mother. It was okay. She had seen much worse. But Mary knew her mother was trying to be there for more. That day, however, tired and fighting off a cold, Mary had told herself that she just couldn't make the effort. And that day had been the last day. They were driving just under the speed limit amidst a light drizzle. Mary was looking out the window into nothing, imagining her blankets and TV at home, and said, "Well, I think it's my turn to choose the station. You never like..." And then the car had... And there was never another chance to speak to her mother again. One drunk driver, and Mom was gone forever. That had been a month before. Mary closed her eyes tightly, remembering. Mustering every ounce of her willpower, she forced herself to stop crying. "You can do this." Then, with more determination, "You can do this." Since there was no signal for her phone, Mary figured she must be somewhere remote, or maybe underground, maybe in some type of a basement. If there was any hope of her survival, she had to act now while she was alone. Mary thought of the flashlight on her phone. If she could see around the room, maybe she could find some way to get out. Mary looked up at the phone about a foot away on the ground in front of her. She began inching towards it, rocking her body. "Come on, you can do this, just come on, you can..." Mary stopped short. Her body tightened, every muscle clenched. From the light of the candle, she just now noticed a pair of shoes on the corner of the shadows in front of her. The shoes were just on the outskirts of the light, and she could just make out the front of them sticking out. But in her mind, she pictured a man standing over her in the shadows. Mary held her breath, watching the shoes. The shoes stared back at her from the shadows. Then, one of the shoes shifted, ever so slightly. Mary opened her mouth in a scream, but found herself incapable of making a sound. The shoe moved again, and then, abruptly, a figure stepped out from the shadows and walked over to her. Mary could hear him, smiling over her in the dark. A voice dripped down from above. "I always like to watch people squirm a little before I kill them. You put on a good show." No, please," Mary sobbed. The figure stepped away back into the shadows, and then she heard something being dragged across the ground. The two shoes stepped back right in front of her face, and this time there was an axe. "No, oh God, no." The figure pulled back the axe in a single, well-practiced motion. Then he brought the axe down. Again, and again, and again.